This is the John Peter Smith live oak. So the story with this tree, it's probably 200 years old or so. This tree was transplanted back in the, I think in the 80s, early 80s. It was transplanted, and it was a big job, a big transplant job. And I could be wrong. It could have been transplanted much earlier than that, but it was at least recognized in the early 80s. And the thing with this tree is, this is a live oak. It's actually our native live oak that we have here, which is not the southern live oak. It's the Plateau Live Oak. The southern live oak being Quercus virginiana, and the plateau being Quercus fusiformis. Back at that time, in the 80s, this was classified as a variety of virginiana, but taxonomists have come to understand that this is its own species. So that's kind of interesting. That's changed about this tree in its life, is that we call it something different. But the deal was, the Fort Worth Independent School District actually used to have their admin campus here. It was all the old temporary style buildings with one office permanent building. And this tree was on the grounds. John Peter Smith is a name you may have heard. Our county hospital system is named after John Peter Smith. But John Peter Smith was a civic leader back in the 1800s. So his emphasis being on public school put him as being a big name in the original Fort Worth public school system, which, as I had just mentioned, this ultimately became the Fort Worth ISD's headquarters, was here. Back in probably early 2000s, I think, the Kimball Museum and the Modern Art Museum bought this as a joint effort to make it parking. And in that transition from it being an office facility to a parking facility, this tree came into the crosshairs of construction. And it wasn't doing well because, I mean, it just had very little maintenance for years and years. The Fort Worth ISD isn't known for its tree maintenance. Okay? But there became a push to turn this tree around, to get the health back going. This would have been at this point, we're talking mid 2000s, 2005, 2006, 7, and into 8. And then finally, after this was converted to parking, this tree gained heritage status in 2009. But back to that whole construction transition that I'm talking to you about, they brought in arborists' help to revitalize the tree. The tree was in serious decline. One of the things that was going on with the tree is this was actually parking lot all the way up to here originally. And this tree was inside of a curb here. So very limited root space. Very limited root space. Over there was the office building. And what we had happening is, if you come over here, look over here on this southeast side, this entire side of the canopy was in severe decline. Severe decline. So we're talking 20 years ago, 2005 at this point, that big limb had to be removed. It was totally dying back. It also had some storm damage. So this whole side of the tree was gone. And it was this big problem that prompted the Kimball Art Museum to say, hey, we need to get somebody on this. It's not just a maintenance problem now. So they brought Preservation Tree, which is no longer around. They were acquired by Save a Tree, which is a big national outfit. But Preservation Tree sent one of their arborists over to figure out a plan for the tree. I happen to have been that arborist. I was working for Preservation at the time. And this is the neighborhood I grew up in, so it was naturally my territory. So they sent me over. So the first thing that I said, all right, here's what we have to do. I need root space for this tree. So we brought in a team to investigate pulling this area of parking lot up and expanding this root system. I wanted immediately a dedicated root zone area. So I said, hey, we got to have a tree ring here. And the tree ring is about the distance of the canopy. This is where a lot of trees are suffering because you'll see turf under trees. It's never good, especially when you're trying to bring an old mature tree out of decline. You don't want any competition. You just want the tree space. That's not to say that root systems aren't traveling well beyond here, but this is to say we can manage this known area of root system, right? So that's one of the things we did right away. Another thing that we did was we had to figure out why this thing was going into late term decline. And the reason why is because, and there's no cure for this, this tree has a bacterial gall, which you can see this formation here. This is a bacterial gall. Down here, that's what you have as well. Now it's barked over a bit, but this is still disorganized tissue over here. So the trouble the tree has with this bacterial gall that there's no treatment for, it's essentially a tumor on the tree. With this disorganized tissue over here, this entire side of the tree was unable to get what it needed. So losing it was good for the long-term management of the tree. Yeah, we just lost half the canopy, but we were having a hard time servicing that canopy with this disorganized tissue. So the bacterial gall is still a problem. It's still a factor because if you look up again, still on this side, take a look at the canopy up top, and you can see how thin it is up this side. That's a result still of this disorganized tissue. So we tried to do some things. We got inventive and did some micronutrient injections to try to give the tree a boost, some extra vigor. And we actually put those injection sites above the disorganized tissue, which is unconventional. You're supposed to inject down at the root flare, but my thinking was disorganized tissue here, it's probably going to be better if we do micro injections above the disorganization. And you know, it's 20 years down the road. The injections probably aren't happening any longer, but it got the tree over a hump and we were able to get it back into vigor. Because as you probably noticed, when you pulled in from this other side, you probably saw a totally healthy tree. And it is on this side. We're just weak on that side. We're always going to be weak on that side. The disorganization is too significant at the base of the trunk there. So that's what we have to live with. But the other thing we had to do was we had to put in cabling systems because it was beginning to fall apart. I mentioned that big limb on the other side. That big limb would have probably not failed in the storm damage it suffered if it were cabled. So the museum decided, hey, let's preempt the next one and let's do cabling systems. So you can barely see up there, but there are cabling systems installed in this tree. And those have to be inspected every year. Those are not the original ones. That's the second set of cables that were installed here. We're going back now 2 decades on my experience with the tree. Those things have probably been in for about a decade, I'm thinking. They were replaced, upgraded. Now, as far as like general health care for the tree, I put it on a 4 times a year subsurface soil injection feeding program. For the most part, it was very low in fertilizer and very high in organic amendment. So really what we were just trying to do was get this area below the tree hospitable for root growth. Give it root stimulation, give it thick mulch. You know, this is how every tree wants to be. They want this big expansive mulch. So you can see the impact that happened to turn it around. It involved changing design strategy. So we had to work with the architects and engineers on this parking layout. We had to work with, there were a bunch of water lines that were running through this thing that we had to get those things dealt with as part of the adjustment to the parking lot as well. So there's a lot of subsurface stuff going on. There's lighting under here, so there was a lot of air spading that had to go on. So we wanted to minimize our negative impacts to the root system at the time. And I'm glad to see we're here. I haven't been here in a while, so to see that this is all still in place, that my plan that I wrote them back in, I think it was 2007 when I wrote the plan, the big turnaround plan, and then 1 year, 2 years later, we'll look at the plaque. They moved to get it named a heritage tree after John Peter Smith. Now, as far as John Peter Smith's dedication to civic life, public education, this stands as the only monument for John Peter Smith in that vein of public education. You could say that the entire John Peter Smith healthcare system in Tarrant County is a monument to him, and it is. But this is his education monument, is the John Peter Smith Live Oak. So you can see from this side, we're looking great. We always get, every time I've looked at this tree over the years, we're at 4 to 6 inches of growth a year. So it's a success story. But this is one of my, you get, as an arborist, you're looking at things that are 20-year consequences, 30-year consequences. Well, I'm in the 20th year at this point looking at what's happened to the tree. So, I've definitely would say I've learned a lot along the way because of this tree.